Hi, you're watching us live on CNBC's digital platforms on all social media handles. I'm Archana Solanki. Let's get you the latest on the Delhi floods and the swelling of the Yamuna River and whether this is a man-made disaster. As we speak, the water level of the Yamuna River is at 208.17 meters, way above the danger mark of 205.33 meters. 3 children have drowned. Although the water levels have started to recede, there's more to Delhi's floods than what you're witnessing today. To talk more about this, I'm joined by Pankaj Vir Gupta, who's a professor of architecture at the University of Virginia. He's also the co-founder of the Yamuna River Project. Professor Gupta, thank you so much for making time. The situation is grim in the national capital. It's not often one sees the mighty Red Fort inundated in floodwaters. VIP areas are submerged. There's floodwater on the ring road. In your view, what are the key reasons why one is seeing such horrific scenes in the national capital?
Thank you, Archana, for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be here. I think the simplest way to start addressing the question you pose is to understand that river systems and the associated communities around river systems are going to be at the front line of climate change impacts. We estimate now that over 500 million people across the globe live in river deltas, and these include urban centers, mega cities such as Delhi. The pressures of accelerating urbanization have also meant that with over 50% of humanity living in urban centers, whenever we see natural disasters or the effects of climate change, the impact and scale is going to be quite large, as we are witnessing in Delhi. And finally, I think, this is also a way for us to examine how have our national and municipal policies become a baseline for testing the power of our democracy in action. The capacity of our cities to be resilient is not just in their ability to safely deliver food, water, sanitation, security, health and education services in normal times, but also how we deal with impending crises in the face of climate change.
Right. You made a very important point about these settlements in floodplains, and in your book you've cited the example of Delhi Metro where they've built a station and an IT park on the riverbed. There are several other examples like the Akshardham Temple and the Commonwealth Village. For the benefit of our viewers, could you help us understand about these big projects in detail and in the national capital itself, which are the vulnerable areas where these mighty construction projects have taken place?
Sure. I mean, if we look at the foundational master plan for Delhi, which was developed in 1962, there were very clear areas earmarked for development across typologies, and also a kind of zone created around the flow of the river in the city, which was to be a kind of ecological domain. Obviously, as the population pressures in the city have been exacerbated, continuing to see greater and greater pressure on very scarce developmental resources, we've had populations and projects and infrastructural loading take place on vulnerable areas such as the Yamuna floodplain. And so obviously, the last time in my memory, 1978, when we had major flooding across Delhi, there were several measures taken to secure the city from the advances of the river in an event like this. But I think the other compounding and complex factor here is the impact of climate change. We are now seeing across the globe, but particularly in India, which is a major center of populace, that we get torrential downpours, we get very compressed periods of rainfall, and the built-up of our urban infrastructure means that the impact is felt by the inhabitants that are occupying that territory that was actually enabling the river to swell and subside naturally.
Right. Can you also tell our viewers about the Yamuna Revitalization Project? Can our policymakers take cues from it to address the current mess in the national capital and other parts of the country as well, where the construction has taken place in floodplains? We saw what happened in Kerala as well.
Sure. Actually, I mean, if you look at the history of flooding in India, especially urban flooding in the last 10 years, I mean, across the board, we remember those horrific scenes from Srinagar in 2014, Chennai, Mumbai, Kerala, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Delhi. I mean, there's barely an urban center left unscathed from the onslaught and the impact of these events. So about 10 years ago at the University of Virginia, which is one of the major research universities in the United States, there was a decision made to create a multidisciplinary research project. We understand that civilizations have always sought settlement on the banks of rivers. We understand that rivers have been not just kind of transportation and sustenance kind of conduits for human population, but they are also kind of very powerful as manifest in our mythologies, in our religious practices, in our production of food. So we started looking at this notion of the dynamic nature of the mega cities, especially cities that had a kind of perilous or fragile relationship with ecology. And given that we are now living in an age which is characterized by geologists as the Anthropocene, patterns where the Anthropocene, simply put, is a period of geological time where patterns of human activity and human settlement are the most significant influencing factors on the environment. So the fundamental principle of the Yamuna River Project, as it was founded at the University of Virginia a decade ago, was to ask one question: can we secure ecology from our own advances as human beings? And hence, in securing and protecting ecology, can we protect ourselves and secure our own future?
Right. Do you think that this damage can be reversed? Because a lot of experts have attributed this destruction and unprecedented flooding to not carrying out the desilting of Yamuna River. And as you also mentioned that there is encroachment. But what about the policies? Like, there's a lot of politics that's been going on over desilting, over the cleaning of Yamuna River, because if the desilting is not done in time, it leads to flooding, as per experts. Do you think that also plays an important role?
I'm not sure about that. I think to take a step back, I think to propose a solution for a dilemma like this, and especially a recurrent dilemma with the impact of climate change, this is not a one-off incident. We are seeing these events happen year after year, and not just in India, we're seeing them across the board. So I think in terms of a solution, the most effective way would be to develop a transparent, collaborative, open source platform for synthesizing political and administrative governance systems with the kind of, urban and environmental realities that are very quickly changing. So the ability to be resilient means the ability to adapt to these changes in an effective way. I think one other result of our research was we understood very clearly that while individual agencies, individual domains of governance may have been quite sincere and effective at doing their job, there was very little cross-collaboration, cross-pollination, communication across agencies. At one point, I think there were over 25 agencies alone regulating the territory and the flow of the Yamuna in the National Capital Region. So I think one way forward is to really create a kind of a larger entity that has governance domain over these multiple entities that can create policy for the future and hence protect our cities and our citizens from these kinds of events.
Right. Another important takeaway from this, and as you mentioned, climate change, there's a concern in hilly areas also, with rampant construction going on in hilly areas. And what we saw in Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand also, that, slopes are being cut, trees are being cut to make way for these mega highways. From a mere planning point of view, an architecture point of view, do you think it is a sensible thing to do given the kind of destruction we are seeing in the Himalayas and the states like Himachal and Uttarakhand?
I think it's definitely giving us a lot of pause and a cause for concern to reflect on what are our national level policies determining the creation or the governance of urban and peri-urban areas, because the population pressure, of course, with a populace of over 1.4 billion people, the advance of habitation on rural areas, on ecological areas, on environmentally sensitive areas is relentless. And so I think there has to be at the highest levels of our government a kind of strategy and a policy kind of initiative that will enable the development of these hilly areas, of these environmentally fragile areas, to be monitored and controlled in a way that protects ourselves and our ecological systems from further damage.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Pankaj Vir Gupta, for making time and helping our viewers understand what is going on in the national capital and how policymakers can take a cue from the various projects that are launched around the world. This was our interaction with Professor Pankaj Vir Gupta, who is a professor at University of Virginia. Thank you for watching this broadcast. We'll be back again.